Hello.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hey, how you doing? Mike Patello.
Larry
This is
Flacco.
Lisa from UMass. Oh,
Joe
Hello,
P.
Lisa.
hi. Hi.
Hello.
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 Hi.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mark Amato on the line, and as John LeBeau likes to do, I think we'll wait till about 1:03 to really get started. For all of you on the line, I'll keep reminding everyone, but if everyone would mute their phone, that makes life much easier.
There's 30 in a meeting. I don't know.
I don't hear anything.
Well, your phone, your cell phone o'clock yet,
We'll be on soon.
right?
So good afternoon, folks. This is Mark Amato from Farm Bureau. We're going to wait till about 1:02 or 1:03, give people a chance to join us. I would ask that anyone who's with us today, if you would please mute your phones. That makes managing the meeting much easier. So if you could mute your phones, that would be helpful. And we'll give folks a few more minutes here.
Yeah, hold on.
You know.
Ashley Randall, are you with us?
Yes, I am. I'm on the line, Mark.
Thank you. Is John LeBeau going to join us?
He will not. It is Michael Vitello and myself from MDAR.
Okay, great.
This is Sumai. I'm here as well from MDAR.
Hi, Boo.
Hi. I think Rick Lang should be joining us as well, or he said he would.
Okay, folks, I guess we'll get started here. I'm Mark Amato, President of the Massachusetts Farm Bureau. It's Monday, and we are hosting what has mostly been our weekly conference call with the folks from Mass Department of Ag Resources. Today, we also have folks with UMass Extension with us. The calls historically have really focused on the efforts at MDAR and their response to the COVID-19 pandemic and in a large part the guidance documents that they have issued. Today's call is going to deal specifically with bulletin number 2020-16, which is Farm Pick Your Own, agricultural tourism activities. Today we have Deputy Commissioner Ashley Randall and Food Safety Specialist Michael Botello from MDAR. And we have Lisa McCaig from UMass Extension. So I guess we'll start the process. Ashley and Mike, perhaps you want to give an overview. After this was released last week, some members reached out to us and said we should have a discussion specifically about this document. So I'm sure there's going to be questions, but perhaps we should do an overview first. And I'm sure, I don't know which of you will speak to that overview, but I'll let you take it away.
Sure, thank you, Mark. This is Ashley, and I won't go too deep into the weeds. I'll leave that to Michael as he worked with industry on this. I'd just like to thank UMass and Farm Bureau for the partnership and for facilitating this call today. I think it's really important as we look ahead to the season. We know that pick your own has been a concern and a topic we had been hearing about, and so working with some of the farms and farmers to really figure out a way that we could have pick your own operations operate this season in a safe and conscientious way, although in a different model and format, was really the overall objective when we started reaching out and getting guidance and information from other states and also from the farms directly. So I'm really glad for the partnership that we've had on this guidance bulletin. And I think just working together to figure out how we can put it into practice will be the biggest thing moving forward. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Michael.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Ashley. I mean, I don't have much more to add. I do want to echo Ashley's sentiments in terms of the partnership, working with the farmers directly and with Farm Bureau and UMass Ag Extension. I think we've done as good a job as possible here, and would like to open it up to some dialogue and questions when it comes to implementing what has been released in the guidance. So Mark, if you could take it from there, I would appreciate it.
Okay, perhaps Lisa, you'd like to say a few words about how you folks have been involved and just to introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you, Mark. This is Lisa, and there are a couple other UMass folks on the line, so if anybody has anything else to add after me, go ahead. But I have been working real closely with Mike Botello at MDAR and just trying to make sure that the guidance that you're reviewing it before it goes out and making sure that it's at least in line with some of the best practices that we're aware of, and recognizing that our expertise is in crop production and protection and not so much a human health issue, and really just trying to put out something that's sensible and science-based, and giving our best guidance as well as we can to make sure that guidance that comes out of MDAR makes sense.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. Is there anyone else from UMass that wanted to say anything, or are you good? I do want to ask folks to go ahead.
This is Sonia Schloman speaking. I'm from UMass Extension with the fruit program. Hi, everybody. I don't have a lot to add to what Lisa said. I just want to make sure that fruit growers and all Massachusetts farms are aware that UMass Extension is here and available and wanting to be helpful in getting people through this season that's going to be very challenging and difficult and something that we haven't seen before. So just know that we're here. We may not have all of the answers, but we'll do our best to help you as best we can. So just want to let you know that we're here.
Okay, thanks, Sonia. I do want to remind folks to please mute your phones if you have that capability. And for those of you who might be on a landline and cannot do that, just be mindful that we hear every sound in the background. So try and keep the background noise down. So I guess at this point, we'll just kind of open it up for questions. I'm sure there are folks that have questions about the details of this document. It's quite extensive, and they really did look at almost all aspects of the potential problems in the pick your own field. So I think it's pretty good, but I'm sure there's questions. So at this point, I'd open it up. Would like to start with the first question.
This is Larry from Kenburn Orchards in Shelburne.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
All right, we have a blueberry pick your own farm, and I sent a note to Rick LeBlanc last week asking if the department or UMass Extension or somebody was going to be preparing some signs that we could use, such as stop, mask required behind this point, or all customers are required to wash hands and apply sanitizer before entering the field. It would be very helpful if the department printed up signs and made them available either for purchase or to give to farms for us to post for our customers.
Yeah, I can answer that. Thank you for the question. We have received that question from other farms. We are looking at the possibility of supplying those farms, or at a minimum, coming up with standardized content that we would be able to get out to folks so they could print it on their own. And we are planning on having something, a plan that we can promulgate as to how we're going to do that by sometime next week. So we'd be able to get that out with some sort of communication as to if we're able to provide the signage, or once again, if not, at a minimum, we'll be able to produce at least standardized language that farms could use, so there's consistency in the space.
So perhaps those could be made available electronically, so we could print them or do whatever we need to do from a
absolutely.
PDF or something.
Yep.
This is Larry again. I have another question.
Go ahead, Larry.
Point 10 in the document talks about the use of reusable harvest bags and says that those are not allowed. If we sanitize our picking buckets with a bleach solution after each use, would that qualify? Would we be able to use our buckets?
Yeah, I don't necessarily see a problem with that practice. Once again, if that was okay, if that was in your plan and it was documented and your local health authorities didn't have an issue with that, I don't see any problem with that practice. The mention of the reusable bags, that's consistent with guidance that was put out in other areas that weren't farm related, including grocery stores. So we've remained consistent with that approach. Does that answer your question, Larry?
So sanitizing a picking bucket, for example, in a bleach solution after each use would be acceptable then?
Yeah, we can definitely talk about that offline. I don't see an issue with that if it was documented and that was the practice that you were going to employ.
Thank you.
Does that mean you have to check that out with your local Board of Health?
Well, it should be in your plan. You shouldn't have to check that with your local Board of Health, but that should be in the plan that you put together, your activity plan, that you have that documented, how you are going to, what practice you were going to use in terms of reusable harvest bins. What we were trying to avoid was customers showing up with their own bags, bringing that from home. So once again, I think we could look at that a little bit more and perhaps work with UMass on guidance that would allow that to take place on your farms.
Wouldn't that be better if they brought their own containers, and then you wouldn't no one would have to touch them but them?
Yeah, once again, I just want to make sure that everybody understands that the guidance that was issued did go through HHS. That is our Health and Human Services Command Center. They reviewed the document thoroughly, gave us feedback. And once again, I think HHS is trying to line this up as best as possible with practice and guidelines that have been promulgated in other areas for consistency. So that is what the guidance, that's how the guidance was issued, and it's consistent across the board.
Joe Pease from Blue Heaven. We're going to give our customers, return customers, their own picking bucket. And we're just worried about sanitizing like the string that holds the bucket.
Lysol.
Use Lysol?
Yes, and water.
This
So-
is Beverly. This is Beverly from
Go ahead,
Trueberry-
Beverly.
From Trueberry Farm. We don't have running water at the farm. What would be the best way people might have an idea of how to? I figure I gotta rinse every bucket that comes out of the farm and have water sanitized except for the people. Is a big What would be the best way of doing that since I don't have access to running water?
There's many different options. So are you asking in reference to the hand washing of folks when they are there?
Is it?
Yeah.
All right. Is having hand sanitizer available for the customers enough, or do I need to come up with some way for them to wash?
You should have hand washing stations available.
Yeah, but do I just need to have this hand sanitizers at the washing stations, or does the washing station mean soap and water as well?
The guidance in number 16 indicates that portable sinks equipped with soap, hand sanitizers, and paper towels should be made available. So I think the guidance is clear on number 16.
Okay.
There are cost-effective ways that you can implement that, including, coming up with your own design to be able to do that. And I know that Lisa McKeague's on the phone. We in our PSA trainings, we have a slide that shows how you can put together a pretty cost-effective hand washing station using materials that you could buy at a local hardware store or Lowe's or a Home Depot. And we could definitely get that out to you.
Okay.
This is
That it?
Lisa. We do have on our UMass website, and I can just look that up real quick, the exact URL for that. But there are a couple of links to the kinds of things that Mike's talking about, like just real simple designs with like a 5-gallon tote with a spigot on it that you can use for hand washing, that you can fill up someplace else and bring out to the field. And there's a few different designs that we have some images of on the website, and I'll chime in a little bit with that URL once I look it up real quick.
Now the other question would be, is having a big bin of bleach solution, water and bleach, would it be sufficient to dunk your bucket and your and the rope into that dunk it in, bring it out, rinse it off in another bin and dry it? Is that sufficient, or do we need to do more to clean up the buckets?
Well, within that question, there would be many things that you would have to consider, including dilution amounts, what you're going to do with that liquid once that water once you're done with, and where you would have that located. So, what we can do is we could definitely work with you offline and give you some recommendations. Both UMass, Lisa can do that, and or myself. So we can work with you on that specific issue. Try to come up with a recommendation that's going to work for your site. Okay?
Yep.
Okay.
And just to follow
I don't
up,
know
sorry, this is Lisa again. If you were to, I'm not going to read out the whole URL, but if you Google UMass food safety for farmers, there's a worker health, hygiene, and training link on that website, and under number 2 of the things that you'll see if you look there is how to build a field hand washing station, and then another thing on hand washing units, which gives kind of a range of some different different things you can use.
Thank you.
Glenn Murphy from Blue Arrow Farm. If I can jump in.
Go ahead.
Is that right? Okay. My question is regarding the compartments or the containers. I'm sorry. If I heard you correctly, and I might not have, the link is to keeping it consistent with the grocery stores and people bringing in their bags. The inconsistency I see with that is, and someone kind of mentioned this, but I just want to highlight the differences. You know, in a U-Pick Blueberry situation, the customer is the only one that brings their container, they load their container, they walk away. In a grocery store, if I bring my own container, I hand it off to the clerk has to touch my stuff, the clerk has to load my bag, and the clerk has to hand it back to me. It's a completely different situation, and that should be highlighted, because having people bleach and maybe using too much bleach on a container with food processing, that doesn't seem safer to me than people bringing their own containers. And we provide our own containers, but I think safety-wise, it seems like bring your own, don't touch anyone else's stuff. It's clear as day to me. So I'm just curious what I'm missing.
Okay, thank you for that comment. We'll take a note of that. We'll further explore it.
Great, thank you.
And who's next?
Just to follow up on the container, if a customer brings their own container and they load their own berries, we still have to put the container on our scale. So the scale would have to be sanitized after their container touched our scale, if in the end you allow customers to bring their own containers, correct?
The guidance provides a framework for you to build your own activity plans. I think it allows for flexibility within that plan. Obviously, when the guidance was constructed, we can't encompass every operating procedure that happens throughout the PYO space. There's incredible diversity as to how PYO farms approach those activities. So you would have to conduct your own assessment within that framework in whatever's in your activity plan that is going to, you know, capture the once again, what we've tried to provide in this structure. I would love to give you a more direct answer. I'm just not sure how you're going to be operating and you know, how those containers are going to be weighed, and if they're going to be stacked on a table prior to weighing, how you're going to manage your flow when it comes to weighing and cash out. So once again, I think the structure, the guidance is a structure for you to be able to develop your own plan.
Okay, thank you. I have another question. This is Pat from the Blueberry Farm in Hanson. I'm assuming that we not have porta-johns. The porta-john.
Pat, I'm sorry. Is that a question?
Yeah. Should we not have porta-johns, since porta-johns companies really only clean once a week?
I don't think we have a mention. Do we have a mention of porta-johns specifically in the guidance? I don't think so.
I don't think so, Mike.
No,
yeah,
I don't think.
I think you should. Yeah, you should be able to use porta-johns in terms of the cleaning periodicity, or what that service company is doing in terms of sanitizing those units. You can ask that, Pat, directly to your service provider, and they should be able to provide you with a response.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sorry, I have another question. What about, we normally provide water for customers to drink out of paper cups, et cetera. So should we maybe not do that this year?
No, I don't think there's any problem with you providing water to customers along with paper cups, as long as you have this, you know, bins where they're disposed of properly, and you know, that social distancing is being maintained around those areas where you provide water. We don't want you to stop that.
Okay, no, we can do that. That's no problem. Okay, and I'm sorry, I have another question. Many times mothers come with a lot of kids, and keeping the kids together should be something that we should post. Remind families to stay together and not have kids running around touching everything, or just limit one, I don't know. Any suggestions around groups and kids?
Yeah, I think that's mentioned in the guidelines. In number 4, we talk about family units and just the way you know, folks should sort of rotate through the PYO operation. As I mentioned before, we could take a look at that standardized language for signage. Pat, you're not the only one that's brought up that issue. I understand that that's a challenge normally during a regular season. That's obviously going to be more complicated this year with COVID-19 response in force. So we can look at, once again, standardized language for signage that we could make available to the community.
Okay, that would really be helpful. So I think most customers now are going to be conscious and aware of social distancing and probably be more cooperative than usual, but it does help to have a sign because you have the occasional parent has difficulty with their kids.
Yeah, absolutely, Pat. We could definitely work on, like I said, that standardized language. I do agree with you. I think by the time that PYO activities are stood up in the Commonwealth, I think most people are going to be well trained in the use of masks and social distancing because we're doing that every day as it is. But the signage would definitely help, and I think that's something that we could definitely do. And I can commit to getting something out to the community that either electronically, where once again you can use the content and the design and print it on your own, or if we can work out something at the department level where we're able to support the funding of that delivery and the fabrication of the signs, and then we can have that discussion as well. Okay?
Okay, that'd be really helpful. The standardized language especially. And if you can provide funding in any way. If not, we can take the language and have signs printed that meet our needs for our farm. And I'm sorry, I have one more question. For social distancing, do cars have to park 6 feet apart?
Yeah, that's not the case. So I have not seen any guidance anywhere indicating that cars have to be parked 6 feet apart. So I wouldn't worry about that, Pat.
Oh, all right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, this is Jacob Fine from Abundance Farm in Northampton.
Hi, Jacob. Go ahead, Jacob.
Just to follow up on the signs, I'm also supportive or excited about the idea of you providing standardized language. Challenge that we're anticipating is that our clientele for our Pick Your Own speak many languages, and many folks don't speak English. So we typically try to translate all of our signage at least into Spanish, if not other languages. I don't know if other folks also have a diverse population. So I don't know if on your staff you ever translate things into Spanish, but just throwing that out there.
Through the company Uline.
Uline?
Yeah, it's just a capital U dash line.
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to get those like within a day.
Okay, thank you.
But I'm not sure about the sanitizers. You can probably go online, and even Amazon may have something like that.
Okay. Now, does anybody also know if Wet One's antibacterial wipes are good for this? Or do I need something that says disinfecting?
Sounds almost the same.
Well, this is
Hey, Lisa, you want to?
Yeah.
Lisa, you want to take one?
Yeah, the sanitizing and disinfecting difference is a little confusing. But from what I've read and what I understand is for sort of routine disinfection, where disinfecting would be to add a sanitizing rate or using a sanitizing agent that would be likely to kill a virus, understanding that this COVID virus isn't on most, labels for things.
Right.
You're going to want to stick with a disinfecting agent, and these bacterial wipes are probably not not going to cut it. So you would want to stick with something. The CDC is recommending a simple, I think it's 5 tablespoons of bleach per gallon of water, which is about around 1,000 ppm of sodium hypochlorite, which is bleach. So you can stick with that for your sort of routine disinfecting of these for non-food contact surfaces. If you're disinfecting food contact surfaces, you would want to stick, I think, with the 200 ppm bleach. Follow the label. So if you have any kind of sanitizing agent, follow the label for a food contact surface. And for routine sanitation, if you're not suspecting that somebody in your at your farm or in your facility has COVID, for food contact surfaces, a routine sanitation using any of these sanitizing agents for food, following that should be fine. But the disinfecting wipes, my belief would be that they're probably not gonna cut it. So
the antibacterial, I need the disinfecting, which are not to be found anywhere around here.
Yeah. So and I think with
hopefully by July they'll have them.
Yeah, hopefully. But for disinfecting all your surfaces, an important thing for disinfection is that the surface stays wet long enough for the disinfectant to work. So a lot of times with these wipes, it dries really quickly. And so what you want to make sure is with whatever you're using, whether it's a sanitizing agent or a disinfectant, that you're following the label for how long the surface needs to stay wet with the material in order for it to kill the microbes that it's trying to kill. So you just have to kind of pay attention to what you're using and really read the directions for what it says about its contact time and the effectiveness of that particular material for different pathogens.
Now, what you said about the 5 tablespoons of bleach per gallon of water for routine non-food things, I take it that means that my picking buckets, I cannot use that ratio for my picking buckets.
You can if you think that if you need that disinfectant rate for your picking bucket, if you're using over 200 ppm, and like I said, that 5 tablespoon rate is about 1,000 ppm. If you're using a 200 ppm, over that, then you're going to want to do a rinse with fresh water. So that's the only issue, is you want to leave the bleach on there for, I have to refresh my memory, but I think it's like 10 minutes or something, in order to kill the whatever pathogens might be on there. And then if you've used that more than 200 ppm solution, you're going to want to rinse it off with fresh water.
Is this Lisa telling me this?
Yes, it is.
Okay, Lisa, I think probably be better that I communicate with you individually.
Yeah, why don't you get in touch and we'll talk about this.
That way I won't be holding the lineup.
Yeah, okay.
Has the department considered a bulk purchasing agreement with a supplier for hand sanitizer?
We are evaluating support tools for industry. That has been briefly discussed. We are not sure if we are going to be able to provide that, but it is something that we're looking at.
In regards to the activity plans, you've mentioned several times having a plan. What's the purpose of that plan? Is that just for our own information? Does that need to be posted? Is that something that the Board of Health needs to review or the department needs to review?
Yep, there's no review for the plan. That's a plan for you to have. So you have your SOPs, standard operating procedures, that fall within the framework of the guidance document. So you're able to conduct your PYO business as you normally would, but with these social distancing requirements in place.
Think.
Yep, absolutely. I think in terms of good agricultural practices and some of the PSR training that we've been doing for quite some time, you know, our recommended preference is that those units have the hand washing station on the outside so you can view that activity. But if they're on the inside, then that's fine.
Thank you.
Hi, I just had a quick. Yep.
Go ahead.
Hi, Linda from Tangerine East Farm. I just had two quick questions. One is in regards to if we are sanitizing and disinfecting some buckets, for instance, when we allow people to do like a blueberry harvesting, if they want to harvest more than 5 pounds or something like that. We are using a plastic non-porous bucket, and then we put a removable plastic bag into it. If we ran those plastic buckets through our commercial grade dishwasher with a sanitizing cycle, would that be sufficient for cleaning those?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, that sounds like that would be sufficient. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. And Linda, you're using brand new liners anyway, right? When you line the bucket.
Exactly. Yeah, I would just want to wash it in terms of people are going to be handling the outside of it as well. So.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And then my second question, I didn't see anywhere in the document with any guidelines restricting flower picking. I just wanted to confirm that that was the case and see if there were any suggestions. If there are any suggestions in terms of we do a flower CSA and people bring their own buckets and their own clippers. I'm assuming at this point, obviously, we would have to be supplying buckets in some fashion and or clippers. Is that correct or incorrect?
Yeah, so I mean, flower picking is not mentioned in this document or flower CSAs. We've dealt with just food. Those activities should be allowed, but that would be under the cognizance of your local Board of Health. Since it's not food, it wasn't mentioned in this document. Does that make sense, Linda?
It does, yeah.
So does that mean we are supposed to be checking in with our local Board of Health to clarify whether flower picking is allowed? Because the Rhode Island regulations that are like parallel to this one do specify that flower pick your owns are not allowed. So I'm just asking for clarification.
Hi, this is Heather Filbert from the University of Rhode Island. I'm listening in what's happening in Massachusetts. And as far as the Rhode Island flower picking, we are pretty darn sure we're going to be able to pick flowers in Rhode Island to pick your own farms. So there's just one huge farm that has a tulip picking, and they wanted to keep that under control. But I think we'll be able to do flower picking. So thank you.
Thanks, Heather.
Mike, I had a question about the flower picking. If in the example that was given, the CSA customer traditionally has brought their own cutter and container, and that no one else ever touches it, isn't that a superior solution than to provide them a container?
Yeah, Mark, once again, we'll take that under, we'll look at that a little bit more closely and then get back to the group.
Okay.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
This is Lisa from Lanny Orchard. I have a question in regards to why corn mazes were put into the category of farm activities. I guess I'm questioning, why can't we do a corn maze and have group social distance, or do like a time ticketing kind of thing to space people out?
Yeah, I can answer that question. So when we put this together, this was the initial draft of this document started well before, in fact, only one state had issued pick your own guidance. And we focused on the food aspect of the guidance to be able to vet that through HHS. That is why we did it.
Okay.
In this format. In terms of ag tourism activities like corn mazes, we are going to start engaging with the community to discuss that issue in greater depth. The timing for that ag tourism discussion and those non-food related activities, the timing's good because, as you know, in Massachusetts, the Attorney General is heading up a task force to look at the reopening of sectors, and that would be one of the issues that we would make sure that we discussed as a community, and that the department would obviously be at the table when it came to those discussions.
Okay, so I mean,
Does that answer your question?
It does. It does.
Yep.
Now, would that also fall into the classification of if you had a sunflower festival, not actually having a festival, but again doing some sort of time ticketing kind of?
Leave it. Drop 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 it. Oh, bad dog.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
bad.
Whoever said drop it, can you please put on mute?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, to get back to your question, we will, could you restate your question? I'm sorry, I got distracted with the drop it.
Okay, no, that's okay. I was just asking if if normally we have a sunflower festival,
right?
But we were thinking of not doing a festival because you can't do events.
We don't want people hanging around.
And we don't want people mulling around and hanging around on the farm. We kind of want them to
Right.
come get what they're doing and go.
Right.
Would that fall into the same classification as the corn maze?
Yeah, we think so. I mean, like I said, it's something that we're going to explore. We're going to work with the community to start cataloging all these different practices when it comes to ag tourism, and do our best to interpret that to HHS. Like I said, the timing is good because of that task force for that phased reopening.
Yes.
We would like to make sure that this is, at the table. Once again, we wanted to make sure that the food aspect of the PYO was what we got through, and we didn't want to confuse the matter by including all the ag tourism type events, right? So,
yeah, that makes
and just
sense.
to reiterate, yeah, just to sort of reiterate, because I know that somebody from Rhode Island mentioned the flower picking, and then conversely, not necessarily related, Brad reinforced the importance of having an activity plan for your PYO operation. Just want to make sure, and I think most people on the call are aware of this, but we are a home rule state. The department issued guidance for farmers markets. We thought that initial guidance was very well written. Since then, we've issued a second guidance document. That one came directly from DPH. The department worked with HHS and really recommended that come from DPH. To provide a framework of discussion with local health boards. But as we're talking, we still have local health boards that are doing slightly different things when it comes to allowing farmers markets to either stand up or allowing what farmers markets sell in terms of food stuff. So I just want to make sure that everybody's aware of how that may play out and why it's important to have those plans in place and really be able to answer a question if it's asked based on something you've thought about prior to. And I think that same method of thought and your ability to plan is going to also be an important part of ag tourism if it is allowed in the Commonwealth, to have those plans written down and how you're going to maintain social distancing depending on what the activity is on your farm. So does that work for you?
It does. It does. Yeah, that gives us some more information because we are, you know, thinking about when we're going to plant and what time and the timing of all of that. So, yeah, as soon as we have more information, and I'm assuming, like, you know, I know that the governor is going to be determining things on the 18th. So as that all comes about, it'll actually be good timing because then we can decide which direction we want to go.
Yeah, and so, you know, we understand the timing and that people have to do seed orders and planning, even for corn mazes. We understand that window is short. So, you know, at the department level, we're definitely making that a priority to make sure that we're providing you with the information for you to make decisions when you need to, and not, you know, end up in a situation where you've made orders or incurred costs and you're just not going to be able to implement the activity. So we're on top of that the best we can.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
I'd just like to echo what Michael stated, and also to Brad's earlier point about talking with your local boards of health. And in the example of the farmers markets, we found that the farmers markets that have been able to open on time this season, or maybe be delayed by 1 week, rather than the ones that have been told they can't operate this season, are the ones that reached out to their local boards of health to start those conversations early on. So depending on your town and your relationship with the local board of health, I think it's good to have those conversations early on before the season starts, because they really appreciate that two-way communication. And by having your plan developed, it does help to show that you're thinking ahead, you're taking the proactive steps to create a safe environment at your operations and farms. So I think the more two-way communication that you have, the better it will be heading into the pick your own season.
Are there any further questions?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Bill and Mary, pick your own strawberries in Taunton, Mass. Do we have to supply masks for people when they come to, or we tell them to go home if they don't have masks? And do we have to do sink washing to have a place for them to wash their hands?
So once again, on the cloth face coverings or masks, you know, customers, everybody should be allowed to utilize the masks that they bring with them. You know, the rules currently, the guidance currently in place in the Commonwealth that was issued by the governor is that everybody out in public should be wearing masks anyway if they can't adequately, you know, maintain social distancing. So I don't think that's going to be an issue. If you want to have some masks on hand in case customers show up, they don't have one, I mean, that is definitely your decision to make, but that is not included in the guidance. Second part of your question, I'm sorry.
Hand washing, Mike.
Yeah, once again, I think we've covered that. The hand washing, you should have hand washing stations available at your PYO activity. And once again, as Lisa McKeague mentioned earlier, if you know, there are plans and photos, there's a lot of stuff online, but Lisa can definitely give you that information where you can build your own pretty easily and cheaply with just, you know, materials you'd be able to buy from a local Lowe's or Home Depot.
This is Susan from Kenburn Orchards, and about blueberries again. I'm anticipating that people will say, but we can maintain social. Not that many people here. We're not going to wear masks. That seems to me to be a real problem, because either we are going to antagonize our customers and lose business, or I don't know. It's full choice.
to answer your question, I mean, I'll do my best to respond to that. So first of all, we understand the challenge with that. I mean, pick your own activities have a whole host of challenges that you folks normally deal with when it comes to the public on your property, picking produce. You know, your local jurisdiction may have guidance. I mean, I live in a town that has issued guidance. We all got phone calls over the last week. They were robocalls telling us that we had to wear masks when we were on local hiking trails and on the bike path at all times. And it didn't mention if you had the ability to social distance. So once again, we can provide standardized signage that perhaps helps you a little bit with the management of folks wearing masks as they access your property. But the guidance is out there, so you know people should be maintaining that guidance, and then you have to do your best to sort of support the guidance as issued.
Joe Pease, I'll pick your own operation in Middlefield. We're putting it on Facebook already about the face coverings and what the people should be doing and what we're doing to support them.
Yeah, that's a great strategy, getting it out early and instead of folks just showing up at your farm. I agree, that's a good strategy. And like I said, I'm hoping by the time PYO activities commence with the earliest crops, most folks in the Commonwealth are going to be, you know, understanding this mask guidance. It's implemented across the state. It's not particular or specific, obviously, to agriculture, independent of where you're going in public spaces. You know, people should have masks with them. So let's hope that's not a huge problem as we enter the season.
I have a question about incurred costs. Is there any reimbursement for incurred costs the state's going to give us?
Yeah, so the department can weigh in as well. The department is evaluating the establishment of a COVID-19 resiliency grant program. We are looking at parameters and how that would be put in place and as to what items that could cover for the space. And part of that discussion does include the possibility of covering expenses associated with the COVID-19 response to the agricultural sector, including the practices or equipment that you may have to modify or procure in support of some of these guidance documents. We can't promise anything, but we are working our best to try to establish some response there. Ashley, do you want to add anything?
Can I add something? It's Laura.
Yeah, Laura, please.
Go ahead, Laura.
I just recommend that, you know, we're evaluating that right now, but if people are purchasing stuff, just to make sure to keep track of what they're buying, as well as keep, you know, receipts and invoices for what they did buy in case it becomes something that we can potentially reimburse for you.
It's just like plastic tables, sanitizing stations, hand wash stations, you know, that line.
Yep.
Yeah. Any type of infrastructure cost that you've incurred or that you anticipate incurring for the upcoming season, as Laura said, just keep track of all of those receipts because that goes to the infrastructure piece. And as Michael had mentioned, if we are able to establish this resiliency fund, it would be retroactive to really the start of this March 13th of when some farms had started incurring costs.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Well, these questions have been great. I think they've really added to the discussion.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
This is Ashley from Windy Knoll Farm in Templeton. We do pick your own blueberries. We normally assign rows for customers to pick, but there's been just some discussion about with social distancing that we shouldn't do that to allow the customers to determine their own social distancing. Do you have Any thought on that?
Yeah, I mean, once again, the activity plan is important as to how you determine that. I mean, I've heard several PYO farms discuss either of those options.
Okay.
It really depends on what's going to work for you. I mean, definitely assigning them by row, and then, you know, making sure that they're aware of social distancing while in the row. I mean, that could obviously work, as could other methods. It really depends on the layout and the flow of customers when they're on your farm. So either option could work.
Okay.
Well, we're coming up on about an hour's time. I don't want to discourage anyone from asking a question, but we're really grateful that Ashley and Mike from the department and the rest of the folks from the department and those from UMass Extension, Lisa and Sonia and the rest, we're grateful for the time they've committed to this. I think their insights have been helpful. And I'll put out a call here one last time for any questions. I want to thank you all for participating. I hope that we've answered at least some of your questions. I hope you all know how to find folks at the department or at UMass Extension or even Mass Farm Bureau. If you need to connect with somebody that you don't know how to connect with, you can utilize the folks at Mass Farm Bureau to help with that. It's going to be a difficult season, as Ashley mentioned early, and everything's going to be new and different. So things will evolve over time, I'm sure. But I think this is a good place to start, good document to start with, and I want to thank everyone for participating today. So Ashley and Mike, thank you very much. Lisa, Sonia, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.